All right, so we're going to start the day off today looking at the midpoint of a line segment, all right? And so when we're talking about a line segment, we have a beginning and an end. And so I'm going to say that we have 2 points here for our line segment. We have point A and we have point B, which generically have coordinates x1, y1, which again, the 1 stands for the first point, which I'm going to say A is the first point because it's the first letter of the alphabet. And B, we have x2 and y2. And again, the 2's are showing that is the second point. Just like that slope formula, y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. This is the same idea for the slope formula, or for the midpoint formula. Now, when we are finding the midpoint of a line, what we're looking at is the middle of the line. Now, if you have 2 tests and you want to find the middle or the average, what you do is you take the 2 tests, you add them up, and you divide by 2. We're going to do the same thing for the midpoint because we're trying to find the middle of the line or the average of the line. But we have 2 different formulas going on because we have x coordinates and we have y coordinates. So the midpoint, which I am going to use a big MP here, so that's midpoint. Whoops, midpoint is equal to, well, if you want to find the middle of the x coordinates, you're going to add both them up and divide by 2. So I have x1 plus x2 divide by 2. And that will get us the x coordinate of the midpoint. The same thing with the y coordinates. I'm going to take y1 plus y2 and divide it by 2. And that will find me the midpoint of the y coordinates. Put them together, you've got yourself the midpoint, the average of the 2 points, or the middle of the 2 points. So for an example, if I want to determine the midpoint of the line, joining point A here, -4, 1, and B, which is 5, -3. Well, again, I'm going to find the average of these 2 points, and so my midpoint, well, the first thing I'm going to do is take our x coordinates and add them together. So I have a -4 plus 5, and I divide by 2. All right, and that'll give me my x coordinates. So then my y's, I take 1 plus a -3 and divide by 2. All right, so then what I end up with, I'll do a couple extra steps here. -4 plus a 5, I lose 4, get 5 back, I'm 1. So I'm going to have 1/2 on one side. And let's see here, 1 plus a -3, that's a -2. Divide by 2. And so my midpoints, I guess in simplest form, the half could be 0.5. And if I have -2 divided by 2, I have a -1. And so the midpoint would be 0.5, -1. If I just tried another one over here, again, I want to find the midpoint between C and D. All right, so again, what I'm going to do is add up the x coordinates and add up the y coordinates and divide both of them by 2 because that'll find me the average. All right, so let me see my x's here. I have a 3 and a 5. So 3 plus 5. And again, because we're finding the average of 2 points, divide by 2. All right, and then my y coordinates. So I have a -2 and a -7. So I have -2 plus -7. And divide by 2. All right, so again, just one more step here. My x coordinate, I have 3 plus 5, which is an 8, and divide that by 2. And over on the other side, what do we got? I lose 2 plus I lose 7. I lose 2 and I lose 7. I'm down 9. And then again, divide by 2. Can't forget that part. And again, just simplifying the points. Well, 8 divided by 2 is 4. And -9 divided by 2, that's going to give me a decimal. In fact, that's going to give me a -4.5. All right, so that's finding the midpoint. Again, not hard. It's actually an easy formula to come up with because you're just finding the average of the x coordinates and the y coordinates at the same time. All right, now we are going to get into something a little more using our midpoint because we're going to talk about medians. So we're going to get into some triangle stuff and linear equations all at the same time, combining stuff we've already done, linear equations, with some new stuff. All right, so now like I said, we're getting into what's called a median. All right, now a median in math, not on the road, a median of a triangle is a line from the vertex, we'll get into all these words, what they mean, to the midpoint. So that's why we need midpoint of the opposite line, or opposite side, I should say. Midpoint of the opposite side. So that's pretty wordy. What does that mean? Well, here we have a triangle. Draw one out. All right, now those points, A, B, and C, they're called vertexes. And so when you draw a line from a vertex, so we have 3 of them to choose from, it's got to be from that vertex to the midpoint of the opposite side. And so in this case, I'm going to say a median from A. Now here's the thing, is because we have 3 vertexes, we do have 3 medians. I'm only going to draw one in here. So again, I'm going to go from the median from A, and it goes from this vertex down to the midpoint. So there's my midpoint right there of the opposite side to show its equal distance. I'm going to put little tickies. And so I'm going to draw a nice green line here. Hopefully it's a little more obvious. That green line there is our median. And again, we could have 3 of them. We could have one from C going across, and we could have one from B going across. All right, so we'll get into that. But there is 3 medians in a triangle, but that's what a median looks like. Now, for example 3, or example 1, I think I called it because it's something new here in medians. I have 3 points, so I'm going to write those down. A, we have -2, 5. We have B, which is the 0.67. And we have C, which is 4, -2. And what I want to do is find the slope of the median. You've got to state where it's from, and it's from point C. Because again, there is 3 of them. This one's going to be from point C. In my diagram, it is from point A. But I'm going to redraw my diagram here just so visually it helps you. You can understand what the heck I'm looking at here. Always helps me. So I'm going to draw a triangle. There's point A. There's, let's call that C. And there's point B. All right, so I draw it in there. There's our triangle. Now, what we're looking at is the median from point C. I just want to find the slope of it. All right, so that means I'm going from C and I'm over here to the midpoint. All right, now I don't know what that midpoint is. I do know point C here is 4, -2. That's just the information given. But now what I need to do, if I want to find the slope of this green line, I need to know the other coordinate, this midpoint. And so that is the midpoint between points A and B. This is really a lot clearer when you draw a diagram. If you don't draw a diagram, you're just looking with numbers here and points, all right? So that's why I draw the diagram. Now this midpoint, again, I've got A, so I'm going to write these numbers in because I'm going to need them, -2, 5, and I got B here, it's 6, 7. Now if I want to find the midpoint between A and B, I add up the x's and add up the y's, divide by 2. And so for my x coordinate here, I got a -2 plus a 6. And I'm going to divide that by 2. My y coordinates, I got a 5 plus a 7. And divide by 2. All right, so a little math on the side here. I have -6 plus, or -2 plus 6. That's a 4. And divide by 2. 5 plus 7 is 12. And divide by 2. And so my midpoint is actually going to be the point simplified. 4 divided by 2 is 2, and 12 divided by 2 is 6. So there's my midpoint, 2, 6. But that's not what we want. We want the slope of this green line. Well, I have the 2 points to connect that line. And so what I'm going to use to find my slope is that formula, y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. And again, the 2's and the 1's refer to the first point, second point. So in this case, I got to pick. I'm working with point C, and I'm working with my midpoint. I'm going to say that C is 0.1 for this slope formula, and I'm going to say that my midpoint is 0.2. It doesn't matter. As long as you get them all straightened out, the math all works out. All right, so then I go over here. My y2, the y coordinate of my second point. I said my second point is the midpoint, and the y coordinate is 6. Minus the y1, which is -2. So I have a minus sign in the formula and a minus sign on that number. All right, so that's the y2 minus y1, x2, second point, x coordinate, so I have a 2. Subtract, because that's in the formula. I'm going to subtract x1, so my first point, and the x coordinate, which is 4. All right, so on the top here, 2 negative signs come together, so that's plus, so 6 plus 2 is 8. And on the bottom, I have a 2 minus 4, which is a minus 2. And so if I simplify that, and here's what I wanted, the slope of my median, which is 8 divided by -2, which is a -4. Lots going on there. Any questions at all? All right, last example. We're going to do something like this, and then we're going to take it to the next level. All right, so next example, we have, again, 3 points to create a triangle. All right, so those 3 points are D, which is 2, 5. We also have E, -4, 3, and F, which is 2, -5. And I want to determine the equation of the median. So I need it from what point here? From what point are we going on? From median from vertex D. Okay, so not only am I finding the slope this time, I'm going another step further, finding the y-intercept so that I know the equation of that median, that line. All right, so once again, what I'm going to do is draw a diagram. Always helps. Gives me a visual, even if it's not quite correct the way it looks, is where the points are. So this is point D. There's 2, 5 there. I'm going to put another point here. I'm going to call that E, -4, 3. And let's throw one down here. That's F. 2, -5. All right, so draw my little triangle here. Nice sketch. All right. Now, again, we're drawing a median from vertex D. So it's going from vertex D, that's the point. It goes right across to the opposite side and hits the midpoint. So there's my midpoint, and that green line right there is the equation of the line we're looking for. All right, so again, there's our midpoint. So just like I did last time, if I'm going to find the equation of the line, I got to find the slope first. But before I even do that, I got to find the midpoint. Now, because of my diagram, I know that the 2 points that I'm going to use for midpoint are E and F. All right, so again, I'm going to go down here. I add my 2 x's up and divide by 2, so I have a -4 plus 2 divide by 2. And I also add my y's up and divide by 2. So I have a 3 plus a -5. And divide by 2. All right, again, I'm going to go a little bit quicker with the math. -4 plus 2, well, that's -2, and then divide by 2. I got a -1 there. 3 plus -5 is also -2, so I divide by 2. I also get a -1 there. So my midpoint's -1, -1. All right, now, like I said, we're finding the equation of a line. We need to find the slope first. So I'm going to use that formula again, y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. Now, again, I got to say which side's not, or which point is first point, which point second. I'm going to say that the D again is going to be my first point. My midpoint here is going to be my second point. All right, so now when I find the slope, y2, well, that's -1 minus, because that's in the equation. My y1, there's my first point of 5. All right, now on to the x2s. x2, there we go, it's -1. Subtract, what do we got? x1. So there's my first point of 2. All right, and so I look at the slope of my line. Let's see here. -1 minus 5, that's a -6. And then on the bottom, I have -1 minus 2, that's -3. And a minus divided by a minus is going to be a +2. All right, now we're not done yet. That's where the last example ended. So here's what our equation of our median looks like so far. Again, y equals mx plus b, but I know the slope is 2. So it's going to be y equals 2x plus b. Now, this is something that we had before. If I know an x and a y that work for this line, I can sub them in and solve for b. And I do have an x and a y that work. And what I mean by an x and a y that work is that's a point that has to be on that line. We have 2 of them we can pick. We can pick D, because that's on the line, or we can pick the midpoint, because that's on the line. Yeah, pros and cons here. I like D because there's no negative numbers, but I also like the midpoint because they're both the same number. I'm going to go with D. So I'm going to sub in point D, which is 2, 5, to find B. And again, once I know B, I already know the slope, I can write the equation of the line. All right, so therefore, here's what we got. Again, our 2 is our x and our y is 5. So I got 5 is equal to, the slope here is 2. The x value is also 2 plus b. All right, now just isolating for b. I've got 2 times 2 there is a 4 plus b. All right, bring the 4 over to the other side. Change the sides, change the sign. So we got a -5 minus 4 on the other side. And then finally, it looks like B is 1. And after all of that, we finally have the equation of the line because I have my M and I have my B. All I have to do now is substitute in the form of the equation y equals mx plus b, which in this case would mean we have y equals 2x, and then our b is a +1. And that would be the equation of our median from D.